You're watching the DSP Leaders Summit on the Cloud Native Telco. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV. It's day 3 of this year's Cloud Native Telco Summit, the final day, and we are live on TelecomTV and also broadcasting to LinkedIn. Today's new content is now available to watch on demand here on TelecomTV and will be added to our Cloud Native channel on the website. Hopefully you've had time to watch the latest panel discussion on the Telco Cloud and our keynote interview today and are now keen to get involved. Well, this is your chance. We have been hosting a Q&A program with our panelists at the end of each day, and we're back now for our final chat of the summit. We're live and we're waiting to hear from you. There's a form on the website for you to use, and that will get your questions directly to us. I'm joined once again by my colleague Ray Maistre, Editorial Director at TelecomTV. Good afternoon again, Ray. Ready for one more bout of punchy cloud nativeness?
Absolutely. Thanks, Guy. Well, yeah, it's been a great week, great panel discussions, 2 fantastic live Q&A sessions already, and I know we're going to have another great one today because we've got a really key topic to discuss today. And that's the role of public cloud in telco cloud strategies and just telco cloud in general and how cloud native fits into that. So really looking forward to talking to our panelists today and hearing what they've got to say.
Indeed, me too. Well, for the next 30 or 40 minutes, it's the viewer's opportunity to question our industry experts. So final warning, grab a coffee now, settle back, compose a question or two for us. And while you do that, let me introduce our guests. Straight from our earlier Cloud Native and the elusive Telco Cloud panel is Azhar Saeed, who is Global Chief Architect at Red Hat, who is again joining us from Boston. Fired up from her keynote interview with Ray earlier is Danielle Royston, Public Cloud Evangelist at Telco DR, who joins us from Austin, Texas. From New Jersey, we welcome back Miguel Carames, who is Director of Network and Technology Planning at Verizon. And from just outside London in the UK, Fahim Sabir, Director of Architecture and Development Network on Demand at Colt, joins us once more. And last but by no means least, joining us again from Paris in France is Bruno Chatras, who is Senior Standardization Manager with Orange and is the Chairman of the ETSI NFV ISG. Well, welcome back to all of you. Thanks for taking part in our discussion today. Let's get right to it. Ray, over to you for our first question.
Yep, thanks, Guy. So we're going to start with Fahim from Colt today. So Fahim, where is Colt on its, I guess, what you might call the cloud native journey? Have you started implementing cloud native processes, methodologies? Have you been doing any development using Kubernetes at all? Where are you on that process?
So, hi Ray. Colt has been moving towards the cloud journey for a little while now. In terms of our network on demand platform, from a software point of view, it is running as a cloud native application. It's installed as a whole bunch of containers, if I remember rightly, about 50 or so microservices running on Kubernetes. We run clusters for dev and test, we run clusters for production as well, and also our SD-WAN service, the application, the portal control application, is also based in the same environment. So yeah, I mean, we are moving forward. In terms of cloud native practices, automated deployment is starting to become a real thing for us, and also, so, better levels of automated testing is also something where we are moving forward. But, it's a real culture shift to actually move in that direction. In terms of our NFV program, that is still not quite there. It's a topic that we're exploring, especially about where we can use cloud native functions across our network. But that's a much more sort of a conversation that happened at a much more strategic level at the moment, and not something that's quite got through to implementation.
Okay, great. And just from a kind of from your experience, I think I remember I chatted to you at the end of last year, and you said that you started down this journey, and it was pretty exciting, and you were learning a lot. is the best way for telcos, do you think, just to kind of get on with it and start implementing these processes in part of their development team and learn on the job, as it were?
I believe so. How you run these processes is very much dependent on the people that you have. So people always talk about things like cloud native processes. There are no cloud native processes. There are cloud native teams that have processes, and the processes have to be adapted to the people that you actually have. It is. In my opinion, it is a lot of learning as you go. Also, when it comes to actual like platforms like Kubernetes and the such, like the amount of documentation that is available at the moment is still somewhat immature. It's growing as expertise actually grows across the different users of the platform. So to a degree, there's an element whereby you have to learn on the job, because there's no there's no manual that you can use to figure out or to be told what to do in that space.
Okay, excellent. Great insights. Thanks very much there. Okay, Guy, I'm going to hand over to you now for the next question.
Well, the next question really directly relates to what Fahim has just been talking about. This one's for Miguel. It's someone wanted to know about Verizon's experience. We know Verizon has been doing a lot of work with Cloud Native, but what has been your day-to-day experience so far?
Yeah, so kind of similar to what Fahim was talking about, right? So we started our NFV adventure a few years ago. We are almost there as far as migrating most of the applications that we have in the 4G wireless network over to NFV. So a big percentage of the applications have been virtualized. We announced a couple of weeks ago that we had our first completely end-to-end virtualized network with the implementation of vRAN as well. So that's been kind of the foundation we've been laying for our journey to cloud nativeness. So now, when the work that we're doing on the 5G core specifically is being built on our evolution towards web scale on our Verizon Cloud platforms, right? And that's a foundational requirement for us. We've been in the lab. We've had our specifications for our cloud stack that were released to our application vendors. Integration work has been ongoing. We've been developing our own tools, including the use of CI/CD, automated testing in the labs that then will extend to production. So we are far along, as far as going from NFV to like the next level down with the use of Kubernetes, microservices, and running the 5G core that we're building on a cloud native fashion. At the same time, I think the point that was made earlier is a good one, right? So it's a continuous learning experience. There is no quite blueprint that you are following, right? So we are learning, adjusting, and training the teams as we go.
Great. Yeah, as you say, there's so much to learn here. Ray, do we have another question for one of our guests?
We do, and I think somebody clearly watched the interview between myself and Danielle earlier on today, because the move to public cloud, obviously, I think is a little bit of a contentious one. And somebody has sent in a question. I need to read some of the direct bits here. So Danielle, obviously you're a very clear evangelist for the use of public cloud by telcos. But somebody has sent in a question here asking if there are still concerns about things such as security, and whether that's data security or physical security, reliability, compliance, interoperability. Are these the kind of things that are still challenges and concerns when it comes to telcos using the public cloud?
Yeah, I think depending on what part of the world you're in, you may have sort of data sovereignty concerns that vary by country. But I think when you take a longer view at what's going on and the different opportunities, I think when you look at 10 and 20 years out, those concerns are going to go away, right? The hyperscalers are going to continue to build out their data centers. There's going to be more and more availability by country. And so this concern of I can't move my data out of my country will go away because Google or AWS or Azure will just have a data center in your country and you can control where your data resides. I think people that are new to public cloud, this is like a really easy roadblock to throw up and sort of just say it won't work for us because of data. But once you spend even 30 minutes on their websites or 30 minutes with their representatives, you very quickly understand that their security far surpasses what any telco can do on their own. I mean, Google alone is spending $3 billion a year on security for their data centers. They build their own chips, they build their own servers. You just read and learn about their security approaches. And every CTO I've ever sat in with in a room with Google or with AWS leans into the table and says, I want that for me. And all their concerns about data security and privacy go away. Their next one are some of the topics that you brought up, Ray, latency, speed. That's going to depend on where you're from and the closest data center. There's tools that they provide so you can ping and see what the latency is. But I think all of these problems, when you take a very long view, get solved. And the inertia, the gravity of all the applications that are residing in current data centers and getting them to the public cloud is going to be far greater than the hyperscaler speed to solve all these problems. So my advice always is get moving, because you have a lot of legacy to unwind and it's going to be really hard to get it to the public cloud. So get going now.
Okay, and clearly some of those concerns are melting away for some operators, because we're just, even in the past couple of weeks, let alone months, we've seen some announcements of telcos embracing public cloud platforms for very key applications. And it looks like you'd like to come in on this question, Azar.
Yeah, hi. I think 2 points of agreement with Danielle and 1 point of disagreement with Danielle, right? And then this is the beauty of having a panel with different people from different backgrounds. 2 points of agreement, absolutely, from a security perspective, I don't believe that should be a concern, because I agree with what Danielle just said. Their procedures, public cloud operations, and what they have done so far is absolutely stunning and amazing, and our experience also shows the same thing. So I don't believe that should be a concern. I agree with that. I also don't believe that the footprint or presence should be a concern anymore, because they're rapidly expanding or they're trying to build partnerships with telcos. So those two, I totally agree. The part there is disagreement on is, public cloud is an attractive proposition for a telco, but putting all of your eggs in one basket in terms of one public cloud environment is tough, because once the data goes there, it never comes out. And it's very hard to move it around from one to the other. So we are not there in terms of a maturity curve in the context of multi-cloud or multiple public clouds and be able to actually have data portability from one to the other, unless you're shimming their APIs and their infrastructure through something like in a Red Hat OpenShift, right? If you don't do that, then it's very hard for you to actually move from one ecosystem to the other. And we're not there yet. I believe there's a lot of work that's being done in terms of multi-cloud conversation with respect to public cloud, but I think that is evolving, and that's still a little bit not as mature as one would expect.
Okay, great. Azar, thanks very much. And Fahim as well.
So I completely agree with Danielle's point with regards to security. Every argument that was given by her in terms of the blockers around it are exactly the same arguments that were had when the public cloud first started appearing, and the conversation was all about moving hosting through to the public cloud. It's not secure enough. It's, I don't have control of my data. It's somebody else's infrastructure, and I don't get a chance to manage it. And that's just a natural sort of defensive position to take, in my opinion. And we've seen this shift before, and I believe that we'll see it again. The only thing that needs some consideration is the telcos have spent a lot of money building compute stacks, and those assets need to be sweated before a movement to the public cloud happens. Otherwise, effectively, you're throwing a whole bunch of money in the trash, so to speak. And that is, the real challenge that you have with cloud native environments or virtualized environments is, in my opinion, they've not met the business case they were originally meant to meet. So, there's a lot of work that needs to happen to make sure that, the telcos get their money's worth out of the stacks that they have built before the inevitable move actually happens.
Great point. And clearly there's some amortization on some ISDN lines still to go by the seam by look at some of the operators around the world.
But just to
Danielle,
add to that,
I
mean, I have so much to say, so enthusiastic about this.
If you can keep it short, because we're going to come back to some of these things a bit later on as well.
And just back to that point around, we've made this huge investment in the data center. And I totally get that, right? It's, billions of dollars, I'm sure, across all of telco. If you don't start your move, right, you're always on the cycle of, I'm not ready to shift just yet, so I need to buy one more set of hardware, one more, I got to do one more refresh cycle. And so I continue to encourage CTOs, get moving. You'll find use for those compute stacks, but you got to start breaking it down because you're never going to get off the treadmill if you don't start moving.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And better the devil you know. I mean, that is almost that's something hard to get over in any business decision as well. So, okay, Guy, over to you.
Great, thanks, Ray. It's a question more related to the vendor ecosystem. This one, Azar, I'm going to put this one to you first. Let me read it out. Private telco clouds offer great new infrastructure opportunities for the supply ecosystem. I think this is supposed to mean they did, or that was the idea behind private telco clouds. Is this opportunity now at risk? If so, is there still a sustainable telco demand for self-hosted cloud-native based solutions?
Sure. What we have seen most recently is telcos themselves are busting the silos that they had originally started because that's the way they wanted to learn. They actually had vertical stacks for different applications, one for IMS, another one for mobile core, a third one for some of the residential services and so on. And they had different vendor ecosystems in there, in each one of those. And they've been operating this kind of an environment. And they did that primarily because they didn't have enough experience with virtualization, and they wanted to figure out a way to learn from those with each of these different vendor ecosystems. Now what's happening is increasingly, as people get more comfortable with these set of technologies, they're trying to create these horizontal platforms that allow them to run these different applications and different functions on top of a common platform. So they're busting themselves these silos and actually going towards a common environment. Now, with that, the work that Fahim described in terms of what he's doing at his end as an example, where they're developing new applications in the context of their customers, in the context of the services that they deliver, all cloud native. Now that actually moves and accelerates this towards a public cloud, towards a cloud native environment for that particular telco. And what I have to also say is there are two partitions. One, there is the telco network functions that need to be cloud native to be able to adopt this whole environment. And then there are some things that are geared towards a public cloud type of an environment which are cloud native already, that you can easily incorporate. So the story is really a little bit hybrid, but it begins with a common platform, and that's what really people are trying to do.
Great, thank you, Azar. I think that's answered very nicely. Ray, I'm going to hand back over to you.
Okay, great. Now we've got a question for Bruno now. Within the ETSI NFV group, is there much concern about the public hosting of VNFs? Much work, a lot of debate over that, and the associated use of public cloud. Is that something that factors into the work that's done within the group?
No. Well, let's say there is no work item, so to say, explicitly addressing this topic. However, I would say that there are two technical areas that have some connections to what you are discussing. The first one is multi-domain orchestration. So this ISG is working on specifying interfaces, APIs to enable multiple NFV infrastructure domains to be used for deploying complex network services that involve multiple orchestration domains. So in this configuration, the ETSI specifications do not make any restriction about whether one of NFV infrastructure domains is a public cloud or a private cloud. They just try to specify interfaces to enable multi-domain orchestration. The other aspect, I believe, is about security. What we can observe is that, and it goes back to some comments that were made previously. What we can observe is that in this ISG, there is a group in charge of security aspects. In this group, you have representatives from vendors, from operators, but also from regulators. And regulators tend to put quite strong requirements on security, on the security features that an NFV infrastructure should offer to the VNF. So that means that an NFV infrastructure is a cloud, so to say. So it's not really a direct answer to your question, but it's also a comment to what was said previously. I believe that one thing that will have to be carefully considered is whether these public clouds meet the requirements that these regulators are pushing, especially for some, not necessarily for all network functions, but at least for some that are considered critical. And 5G is one of them.
Okay, absolutely. Great. Thanks, Bruno. Guy, back over to you for our halftime break.
Indeed, this panel is indeed a game of two halves. We've heard from each guest now, so we really ought to mention the viewer poll that we've been running these past 3 days. We've been asking, do telcos need to add cloud native methodologies and practices right now, or can they wait? And if you haven't already done so, please take a couple of minutes to vote, a couple of seconds to vote, really, it doesn't take long. And we'll take a look at the results at the end of the programme. And do keep sending your questions in to our guests, please, because we're about to start the second half with Ray. Ray, any new questions coming in for our audience?
So nothing new that's come in the past few minutes, but there is a question, and we're going to put our hands up here. We cooked this one up, but it was based on something that Fahim said, I think, on one of the panels this week. So, Fahim, I'm looking for you to elaborate on something you said earlier in the week about Kubernetes, and there's an assumption that the new generation of network is going to be underpinned by Kubernetes. But is that a done deal? Are there any options? Should we be considering other underlying technologies?
Yeah, so I mean, the reason I made that comment was in the context of the adoption of OpenStack, for example, when building out NFV environments. And it's my opinion, my personal opinion, that the reason that it's being used in NFV environments, it's not because it's necessarily the right thing to use, more because it existed when we needed something, and therefore it was the thing that we decided to use as an industry. Now, one thing that we found around OpenStack is it's difficult to build, it's difficult to manage, especially for network operations teams, and it's taking a long time before they're actually able to get a handle around it. And then to me, it is very much a case of, the use of OpenStack in NFV environments is what I would describe as a marriage of convenience rather than it's because it was the right thing to do. And the concern that I have more than anything else is, the adoption of Kubernetes for a more sort of cloud native environment, it would also be a marriage of convenience. And the question I would put out there more to the industry, not one and quite an existential question, is, are we actually working out what a good cloud native environment looks like, suitable for telco use, or are we just basically choosing Kubernetes because there is nothing else there that we can compare it against, if that makes sense?
Well, here at TelecomTV, apart from a really strong cup of coffee, there's nothing we like more than an existential question, and it's a great one. So Azar, I think you've got some comments to make here as well.
Absolutely. I think, if you, two points. One, if you just take a step back and look at how some of these clouds are being built by these, hyperscalers. They operate under certain principles. They operate under principles of eventual consistency. They operate under principles of throwaway hardware, throwaway software. That's the true model of a cloud. If you want to emulate that model in the context of telco applications, then you need to be able to adopt some of those, some of that methodology, some of that design process, and some of that thinking as part of the telco. So in that context, is there anything else that can deliver this better than Kubernetes does? No. That's why Kubernetes is the way to do it. Is there anything that will come in the future? We don't know if there's going to something else that's going to come in the future. But Kubernetes provides a very powerful construct in which you have microservices being orchestrated. Then the question becomes, what about these network functions, and are they really cloud native? Well, we're seeing the same story here in the cloud native conversation repeat. When the virtualization happened, the same thing what happened. What did people do? They took their applications, or they took their network functions that were running on appliances, put a wrapper around them, throw it into a VM, and said it was virtualized. It was not really optimized. It was definitely virtualized. Now we're seeing the same story repeat when we say you want to run in containers. If they are taking that same application, building a large container, and saying, go orchestrate this with Kubernetes. Is that really cloud native? The answer is no. Have you done state management properly? Have you done all of the application disaggregation properly or refactoring properly? The answer is no. So when you don't do that, then you don't really get the benefit of cloud native environment. And this is why then people begin to ask questions around, oh, how difficult is it to operate? Can I really move there? Are my network functions there? And so on and so forth. I think you got to address the source of that particular problem. That's basically what I think.
Okay, excellent, great. And Bruno, I think we saw your hand up there as well.
Yes, I wanted to follow up on what was said before. I guess it's a kind of word of caution. I remember that when we started this NFV work, people were taking for granted that all VNFs will be managed using OpenStack. And OpenStack greatly influenced the NFV specifications, I would say. But then the reality of the market is that other solutions have been used as well. Today, I believe it's a bit similar. Clearly, Kubernetes, everyone is working with Kubernetes in mind. Whether Kubernetes will stay forever, we don't know, as this was highlighted before. So what is the consequence of that in terms of standards, I would say? I think it means that everything that is not directly dependent on the type of management software that you use to manage the virtualized resources and the containers, everything that is not directly dependent on that, we should be careful to specify it in a way that will still be applicable if it turns out that the industry comes with an alternative to Kubernetes that fulfills the same benefits, that provides the same benefits. So that's what I wanted to highlight.
Okay, excellent, great point, Bruno. And Danielle, as well, is the only way Kubernetes?
So I think this is a real big mistake that people make, that they call their application cloud native because they have it in a container running on Kubernetes. And so I'd argue to really call something cloud native, You have to be really using the software that's only available on the public cloud. And so a lot of people say, oh, I'm cloud native, but I'm also cloud agnostic. And I think those are mutually exclusive concepts. If you're truly cloud native, you're leveraging the power of that particular cloud in a very specialized way. And a lot of people talk about public cloud as being this commodity. I'm using it for the compute power. I'm using it maybe for storage. But really the benefit, the huge benefit, and I think people are going to start to realize in the next probably 5 years, is that the reason why you move to the public cloud is not because it's just a commodity data center, because there's special software there that makes your business better, right? You can stand on the shoulders of the greatest technology organizations in the world and leverage their technology for your business, right? You can leverage their great databases that only are available on their public cloud. You can't take Google Cloud Spanner and move it to your private database, the private data center. You can't take Spanner and run it at AWS. And there's certain applications that have specialized needs, and you should pick the cloud based on the technical requirements of the application. Yes, in telco, we have lots of different needs for different applications, network versus software applications. But just saying that I'm using Kubernetes, and so therefore I'm cloud native, is just glazing, right? It's the tip of the iceberg of the power of the cloud that we're really not embracing. And so that's what I'm constantly trying to talk about. It's about the software. There's a real difference between the clouds. You need to understand them and leverage that to your benefit for the different applications. And it's banking has seen this, right? Banking's come around on this same topic. They had the same start that telcos had, right? And now, JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon is on stage, almost a year ago at AWS with Andy Jassy saying, we're moving everything to the public cloud because it's such a huge advantage for our business. And I think the same thing will happen in telco. It's more than Kubernetes.
Great. So we've almost been round the whole house here. So Miguel, anything you want to add to the Kubernetes conversation before we move on?
Yeah, there was a lot in there, right? So the one thing that I would say is I do agree that it's not just a matter of saying, hey, I'm using Kubernetes for container orchestration. It's not enough to say I'm using containerized applications. It's a complete paradigm shift. I don't know that I'm willing to go 100% with some of the comments on public cloud. I think there are all risks for the operators as well, right? We need to manage and have our unique requirements and expectations. We are partnering very close with the hyperscalers. Some of the announcements are public. I don't know that we necessarily are ready to say we can run our telco applications with the expectations that we have as far as performance and so on yet, right? So maybe if we are having this conversation in 5 years, it'll be a little bit different. But it's true that we did spend a lot of time in this kind of like soul searching, very similar to the conversation that's being had here when we're preparing for our own 5G core RFP, and we had a lot of requirements on cloud nativeness and the things that maybe we did compromise on the early stages of NFV. And I think the comment was made earlier where a lot of the application vendors, they simply forklifted their software from the physical world, put the wrapper around and drop it on a VM. And we call that NFV. And then did we really benefit or achieve all the benefits that we're after? Probably not. So we did set very stringent requirements as to what we are expecting for the applications to run in our web scale environment. And I think we covered that in the panel earlier in the week. It's a lot of work for the telcos, no question about it. It's a lot of work for the application vendors or for the vendor ecosystem overall. It requires very tight collaboration. Requires everybody to be more open-minded and maybe embrace things that we didn't like and maybe the vendors didn't like either because they felt they were more in control in the old models in which they delivered turnkey solutions. But it's really the only way to get there. So we embrace the challenge. We jump into the very deep end of the pool. We've been at it for a couple of years now, and we think we are about to start reaping the benefits. But it's not something that happens overnight for sure, and it's a philosophical shift and a different way of working, and not just a technology change.
Excellent, great, Miguel. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Guy now with a question that is, hot, I was going to say hot off the press, hot off the digital press.
Hot off the digital press, indeed. Someone has risen to our challenge and sent in a question in the past few seconds. Danielle, let me put this one to you first. I'm going to shorten it a bit. It's a long question. I'm going to try and abbreviate this. Is it fair to state that those telcos, those future-looking telcos who are moving towards 5G will always have hybrid cloud environments that have a combination of computing and data at edge, whether that's private or from hyperscalers like AWS or cloud?
So I have a pretty bold vision about where telco is going to go, and especially the software that telcos use. I think that over the next 10 years, everyone will be running all their applications in the public cloud. And I think there's going to be that middle time where things are shifting over and you're going to have this hybrid scenario. But, I always like to call private cloud the fake cloud, right? It's just more expensive on premise. It's not enough. I hear someone laughing. It's not enough of a shift, and it's a huge effort. And so why do you do it? And so I believe that IT groups could spend 50% of their total spend today. They move to the public cloud in a very sort of refactored, re-architected, rethought, and I think way. And so that's a huge, huge nugget for them to go after that funds all their investment in 5G, 6G, 17G as it comes along, right? And so maybe at the edge, yes, that hyper local presence is going to be very important for that experience. But I think, the hyperscalers will continue to expand. I think the software will get better. I think the application vendors in our space need to really lift their game and offer a better product. And so I think the disruption is really ripe on both sides. Disruption for IT groups to learn all new technologies, and disruption for the application vendors to build, I think, 10x better product so that it can meet them there when they're ready to move to the public cloud.
Thank you, Danielle. And if we're talking hybrid and edge, we've got to bring Azar into this conversation. Azar.
Yes, thank you, because that's part of the strategy that Red Hat has actually banked on for the last 2 years or so in terms of hybrid environments. There are some applications that you cannot run them in public cloud and be able to operate those type of services to those customers. You have to have this controlled data plane separation. That's really important for that to happen. So to actually take that statement and make it so bold as to say all of the applications will run in public cloud, I don't think so. But is there a majority of those applications that can move potentially towards public cloud or can be rewritten to take public cloud into account? The answer is yes. I think that can happen. So this is where the hybrid cloud strategy comes into picture. Hybrid cloud is critically important for our customers, both for telcos and I think Danielle gave the example of financial enterprise, FSI. Absolutely. And we believe that hybrid cloud is the right way to go. There are some applications that are well suited for the public cloud environment to be operated upon, but in terms of ultra reliable low latency capabilities, in terms of the nearness to where the data is coming from, whether it's IoT, whether it's sensors, whether it is cameras, or whether it is something else where the analytics is really required much closer to the source of that particular data, you cannot use a public cloud environment like that in those cases. Where the public cloud will go is at max colo with a telco which owns the real estate. That's the maximum location it'll go. It won't go into the RAN. It won't go into the IoT gateway conversation. It won't go close to the data stores as we would expect. So there is actually a good segment of applications and capabilities that are required to be built on general purpose compute. You want to call that an edge cloud, you want to call that a private cloud, it's the same.
Thanks. And Fahim, I think you want to add to this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I I think the 10-year claim is a little bit bold as well, given the amount of time that it's taken for telcos to move away from a completely sort of physical network function environment through to a virtual network function environment. And I'd also challenge the 50% saving aspect, because the re-architecture is not going to come cheaply. The re-architecture, the rewriting, is not going to come cheaply. So whilst I agree with Danielle that everything or most things, a large proportion, if not everything, is going to move towards the public cloud, I wouldn't be quite as bold as saying that it's likely to happen in that time frame. It's just that there is a ton of work that needs to happen in order to get there. And being in the industry, we all know how quickly telcos can turn and how quickly they can change direction. And well, generally that is not very fast.
Yes, the super tanker analogy comes to mind a little bit there, doesn't it? Thanks very much. I'm aware of the time and we have to press on, but Ray, I think we've got a related question come in.
Yes, and so this question has come on, and apologies if I get the pronunciation of this name wrong, but a question from Amer Arsalan from Kubernetes. And the question is about, and I think it's really linked to this topic of, which applications might be best suited for the public cloud, if not all. And there's a question here about the telcos might go cloud native for applications such as compute functions on Kubernetes and other microservices, but what about data management? Every hyperscaler has different type of database or a different database layer. So what should telcos use? Now, is that a question that anybody feels comfortable taking on board and wanting to answer? Okay, Danielle. Yeah, I know you're very familiar with database functionality of the public cloud network.
Well, Optiva, where I was formerly CEO, is a charging vendor. And in charging, very specifically, the database is very important. It's a write-intensive application where you need to, write the updates to the usage and keep track of it. So it's right in the heart of monetization. And so when you're looking at a particular application, there's always important technical decisions that need to be made in the design of that application. And for charging, really the database. And so a couple of years ago, when we were thinking about moving charging to the public cloud, which was, I guess, as controversial as I've been today on this panel, but we looked at AWS database offerings and we looked at Azure database offerings. And then literally the day that I started at Redknee, at Optiva, Google Cloud Spanner was announced, and it was the perfect database for our application, right? And so, I think it's, again, don't treat the public cloud like a commodity. It's not just dumb storage and dumb compute. There's actually some particular software that's available not everywhere, usually in their cloud. They're not going to move it and make it available in the other clouds. And so for certain applications, you may pick a different hyperscaler based on what you need. And so it's, these cloud databases work differently than the Oracle databases, right? Our estimate was that you could save, a 1/10 of the cost of Oracle and 10 times faster than Oracle. And to have a database that could auto scale up and down, an elastic database, without us having to spend and have it all set up, was huge for charging, huge. And so that was a really powerful message to our customers and to our prospects, to be able to eliminate Oracle, reduce costs by 90%, and have 10 times faster database. And I think different applications will need different. Well, maybe Spanner isn't the right choice for a different application. You should pick Aurora. You should pick Cosmos DB. So there's differences. They're awesome databases. Gartner's done reviews on them. And I think finally Oracle was starting to drop in the rankings as the cloud databases are usurping them. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Okay. Anybody else for that one? Or Guy? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Azar. Sorry.
No, one part of the question was what applications are suited for public cloud and what are which ones are suited for private cloud, and how do I actually draw that map out? This is an exercise I did with one of the telcos, right, in the Middle East, and they were actually evaluating which applications should remain in their own cloud environment. They have their own private telco cloud environment, and which applications can potentially move to a public cloud environment. And they actually rated based on a certain criteria. Now, obviously, applications that are independent, that are more stateless, that require lesser amount of management, those are the type of applications that can live in a public cloud environment where you don't need to worry about things like latency, things like access, things like So there is a criteria which you can write down, and based on that, decide which applications can migrate over to a public cloud and which can stay in your own private cloud environment. But most of the times, this is governed or designed by presence of the private cloud closest to the user, because latency kind of rules out a whole bunch of things. Also, the elasticity is one another factor. Availability is another factor. So these are some of the factors on which you need to weigh and then make your own decision. There's no one hard and fast answer that says, do it for this one in public and do it for this one in private, because in two different instances, the answer may be exactly the opposite.
But I think you need to be really careful about that on the latency point, just to chime in on this thing, which is if you're using AWS, I don't think you can get deterministic latency, but on both Azure and on GCP, you can. And so if you measure it, it will always be, it takes the same route. Google likes to call it their cold potato algorithm, right? It's the opposite of a hot potato. So they try to get
the
you
reason
to
why
Google, they try to get you to the nearest point of presence, and they take you all the way into the database. And all the way into the data center. And once you measure it, you have deterministic latency. And so I wouldn't say, don't move something to the public cloud because based on latency, I'd measure it. If it's fast enough, move it all, like move as much as you can. And it will be constantly changing because these guys are constantly expanding, adding more points of presence, adding more data centers. So what was true last year may have changed.
I agree with the measurement part for sure, right? But what I was trying to talk about is, let's say you want to deploy a ultra reliable, low latency type of an application with 5G, right? You're not there today in terms of any of the public cloud footprints to be able to go realistically do that with the RAN. So there, it rules out most of the public cloud providers in that context. But you're absolutely right that these guys are building high capacity backbones, like Google has their own backbone. If anybody has seen the Google chart in terms of how much capacity they have on their backbones, they can probably take all of the telcos and put all of their traffic on it and still blink an eye. Blink, and nothing will happen to the network. So yes, that's true in some cases, but it's not true in all cases.
Mm-hmm. And not true in all locations. I agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would add to that is, I mean, just echoing Daniel's points to a degree. And that is, this is the moving target. So the answer that you would have got a year ago will be different from the answer you'll get now, will be different from the answer that you'll get in a year's time. Ultimately, the hyperscale cloud providers are improving in a number of different dimensions, and they will continue to do so. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's not so much a question of if, it's more of a question of when. And the answer in terms of which applications can move, the ones that can't move today, in my opinion, will be able to move at some point.
Okay.
And I think you should design your applications in a way so that they are ready to move, right? I mean, you should get them to a point where, like, when it's ready and it's fast enough, you can move, and it's not a whole new design cycle. So I think keep that in mind so that you're ready to do it when it's ready. But go ahead.
Absolutely. Great points. So no problem. We've run over time, but we want to get one more question in because this is a great panel, great discussion. So Guy, back over to you.
Thanks, Ray. Yes, indeed. The red lights are flashing all around us, but I'm colorblind, so it does not matter. Our dilemma here is we're getting loads of questions in at the very end, but I'm going to pick one. That, let me pick. This is a nice straightforward one. Miguel, I'm going to start with you if I can. Do you expect to see greater innovation in services once cloud native becomes the norm at telcos?
Yeah, so the answer has to be yes, right? So, and that's the kind of the main reason, if we think from a business perspective, for which we are embracing cloud nativeness, right? There are more tactical or technical reasons or selfish reasons, right? Like the operational benefits that we get, the agility. But then from a business perspective, we want to create an environment that's very dynamic, that enables the creation of those applications that will take care of or take advantage of the technology, right? Like at the end of the day, that's our model. We run networks, and we partner with the application developers so that they can take advantage of those networks that we build. And that's very much the hope for cloud nativeness, in our case, paired with 5G. That's our story, that's our goal.
Great, thanks, Miguel. Well, look, I think we better start heading towards the end of the show. But before we wrap things up, we ought to take a look at the latest polling numbers, because we've asking you all week if telcos need to add cloud native methodologies and practices right now, or can they wait? And you said if I click on the refresh button and get the absolute latest figures, it's changing. It's been changing each day. We're almost up to 50% saying right now. It's too mission critical to delay this. We have to act right now. But we've got about 30% saying we can wait 6 months or so, but we've got to look at the 6 month to 12-month period. Otherwise, telcos will fall behind. And then we have a few percentages that say, don't panic, 2022 probably. But it looks like the vast majority are saying we must do this today. Ray, what do you make of these results?
Well, I think the thing that I noticed there is that, like you say, they've changed during the course of this week, during the course of the summit. And I do wonder if people have been tuning in, watching the panels, listening to the discussions, and coming to the conclusion that it's that right now is the time to be doing things and not waiting, because that's definitely shifted more towards that immediate action than earlier in the week, for example. So I think the power of the summit is showing there, I think.
Yeah, I think it is. And as our Deutsche Telekom guest said earlier in the week, we ought to add a line to say that you need to act yesterday.
Yeah,
it's
he would have
so
voted for
time
yesterday.
sensitive.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, that's pretty much all we have time for today. We have no more money for the meter. So a big thank you to all our guests and to all of you watching the program, and for sending in your questions. They're still coming in. It's much appreciated. That's it for this year's Cloud Native Telco Summit. We've missed seeing everyone in person, but we are very grateful that you've joined us online. Time is precious, and we are striving to give you the most relevant and essential content in a way that is beneficial to this new normal way of working. Next month sees the debut of our new Edgeonomics Summit as we take our DSP Leaders program all the way to the network edge. We hope you can join us for that, but until then, thank you very much for watching and taking part this week. Stay safe and see you again very soon. Goodbye.